Hello, and welcome to the second episode of Talking to a Wall podcast, hosted by yours truly. Um, this is, like I just said, it's the second episode of this podcast, and although it's the first episode with an actual topic, but today I was gonna begin to kind of question the really morally heavy question of what does it mean to be a good person? And I'm gonna start this off with my reflection on my life, I would say. So, right now, if I were to die in this instant, this moment in time, and if I were to reflect on my entire life, I would not consider myself a good person. I don't think that I've done enough good things in my life to be categorized as a good person. And what I mean by that is like doing good things. And I think in my head, doing good things is like good deeds. And I've always been raised around like a religious kind of family. And so when I think a good person, I like that's just my go-to, almost like a Christian like definition. And so I did a quick Google search and I asked, what is the definition of a good person? And it is an honest, helpful, or morally good person. And then the example is, I like him. He's good people. First off, I don't think that's correct grammar, but that's coming from the Merriam-Webster. So, and that was updated November 9th of 2023, which was 8 days ago. So it goes, and then the next one goes, a truly good person is one who people want to be around. People are drawn to them by being positive and finding the best in others. They can make and keep friends easily. That was updated November 9th, 2020. So that's 8 days and 3 years old. But you immediately get into a moral argument because it goes, the first definition is a morally good person. Morals. Everyone has a different moral because morals and ideals are shaped by how you were raised, who you are, how you think, what you've seen, what you value. Like, for like somebody to think, so there are going to be two people in this example. There's going to be Brad and Sarah. Sarah is a very religious kind of gal. She's very into like Christianity and all that. And with the war going in the Middle East right now between like Israel and I want to say Gaza, I believe. Don't quote me on that. um, but she's very supportive. And she's like, oh, blah, 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 blah. She's very passionate about it. She's very out speaking about it. She wants to raise money to help those in need. She wants to help people who are hurt and injured and blah, 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 blah. She's just very into that. Brad, on the other hand, we're going to use him as he is a atheist. He doesn't believe in God. He believes that like history repeats itself no matter what, and he's just a very stereotypical kind of guy who just, if I'm not involved, it's not my problem kind of thinker. And I don't personally think there's any wrongs with that kind of thinking. But Brad sees Sarah, would see Sarah as, yeah, she's doing a quote unquote good deed, but doesn't necessarily think she's a good moral person. Sarah, on the other hand, would think Brad is terrible. How could Brad possibly not believe in all these things that she does? How could Brad possibly not care about all these people who are getting hurt and killed in this war thing that's going on in the East? And you can see how each of them have different morals and different ideals and values and how it really affects each person. I guess those are like really, really high end, complete different ends of the spectrum kind of example. But it's like, if I were to go to my best friend right now, we would have different morals. We would have different ideals and values. And I think with every person you value and I like you value and have you value things differently is what I'm trying to say. So it's like I like I was talking to my math teacher this last week about a situation. I asked him what he was thankful for, and he kind of began a rant. I ended up being like 5 minutes late for my class. But he was saying that if you had your dog, I have my dog, my pups. She's actually right next to me. Um, and my dog was drowning, and there's a random stranger drowning. Who would I choose? And my first thought is I'm gonna choose my dog because I don't know if that stranger is a murderer or if that stranger's a bad person. But he didn't say this. This is my interpretation. But I was thinking that stranger could think I'm a bad person for saving him. Maybe that stranger thinks that like, oh, nature has came to take me, like, and I save him, and he's like very, oh my god, you're such a bad person. You just saved me from Mother Nature doing its course, and blah 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 blah. He could think I'm a bad person, or I could save this drowning dude instead of my dog, and he could be a murderer, and I could be like, oh, you're a bad person, but he could be a murderer of like, say, like pedophiles, and he thinks he's a righteous person. I'm not saying that people who murder pedophiles are not good people or anything. Okay, this is just an example. But my math teacher, he began to say, like, if you were to save your dog, you're selfish. Selfish. Not shellfish. Selfish. Oh my gosh, I can't speak today. But because you're being selfish by choosing something that's more convenient and more thoughtful and more important to you rather than the other person. The other person could have a whole family. The other person could be a cousin, a daughter, a mother, a cousin, an aunt, whatever, okay? But then he began to say it about your family members. And in my case, I would save, this is like family member to stranger. It depends also on the stranger. Like, if the stranger was like a 3-year-old little kid over like my parents, I'd probably save the stranger because the stranger has more life to live compared to my parents. The stranger is 10 times younger than my parents. So it would make sense because she has 10 times the amount of life to live. So it makes sense to save her over like my parents. But like if it came to my brother and a grown guy or woman, I would save my brother because once again he has less life to live. But if they're the same age, I'd probably end up picking my brother because my brother still has a lot of life to live and he's my brother. Like, it would be a substantial loss in the family. Anyways, but people could think I'm a bad person for not choosing my parents in the situation where there's a 3-year-old against my parents. They can think I'm terrible. They can think that I don't value family and whatever. And it's like, yeah, I don't value family to the extent that maybe others do, but I still like love them and I still value them in my life. But it's like with my beliefs and my morals, I would save the little kid. And people are gonna bash on me for that no matter what, because everyone's views and morals are different. That's kind of the end point I'm trying to get to. Another thing is like I said, if I were to die in this moment, I wouldn't feel like a good person. I wouldn't feel like did a lot of good things in my life. I would just feel very almost flat. Like I left a very unfulfilled life. So there is one time that I can recall ever being a good person. So back 2 years ago, my best friend at the time had this dog. This dog was really old. It was an old little like chihuahua looking thing. It was the size of a chihuahua, but it wasn't a chihuahua. I don't know. But best friend was like sad about it. This dog had cancer and had like surgery, and things weren't just looking good. It was just declining really quickly. It wasn't eating, whatever. And it was like a break or something. And I was talking to her, and she got a phone call from her parents, and her mom was saying that they plan on putting the dog down before she got home from school. And my friend immediately started crying, bawling her eyes out, and she handed the phone to me, and I took the phone. And her mom was like crying and like trying to explain her reasoning and whatnot. At the end of the day, like there was a bunch of us in this friend group, and the rest of the friend group took my best friend at the time outside to calm her down, and because crying in large areas of people is embarrassing. Don't act like it's not. It's truly embarrassing. But at the end of the day, they didn't end up putting the dog down that day. They ended up waiting until my best friend could go with them. And so that day after school, I drove over to Fred Meyer's, which is like a little store. It's almost like a Walmart, but it's mostly for food. And I walked in and I was browsing the delis, like the little deli fridge area where it had all the pepperonis and whatever, and all the salamis and all the really fancy cut meats that have been like dry aged for like 12 years with mold growing on them and stuff, like that kind of stuff. And I was looking for a while, and there's a kind of an older lady. She's probably her mid 40s. She like was looking too, and I ended up asking guy. I pointed at this like pepperoni stick. I was like, "Hey, how much is this stick?" He's like, "Oh, let me like go wait for you." And I was just waiting, and this lady goes, I couldn't tell you directly what she like said. I couldn't quote her word for word, but she said something along the lines of, "Hey, I've always wondered why people buy sticks of sausage. I've been wanting to since I was little, but I've just never found like the right time or the right occasion or whatever." Like I said, something along those lines. And I looked at her and I said, "My best friend's dog is being put down sometime this week, and you can't go wrong with getting a dog a sausage stick to eat." And she looked at me and like, you know when like people ask you if you're okay and you just like start breaking down right then and there, or people ask like, "Oh, how's this person?" and you look at them and like they died. That kind of blank look she kind of gave me. And she looked at me and she's like, "You're a really good friend." And she's like, like you're a good friend. And she really emphasized the word good. And the guy ended up coming back with the pepperoni stick, and he's like, "Oh, this is gonna be like $17." And I was like, "Okay, like I'll take it." And he wrapped it up, and I walked away. And I went down the chocolate aisle, and I got like, I want to say it was like a Ghirardelli like raspberry filled bar or something, because I didn't know what my friend at the time's favorite chocolate was, so I kind of guessed. And I think I also bought like a pack of Sharpies or something. There was an actual need that I needed to go, and I was like, you know what? It wouldn't take that much for me to buy this dog some treats, because I had known this dog for what, 8 years at this point, and so this dog was kind of important to me, but like not as like I have a weird relationship with death, so it's like I'm kind of spaced off from the death kind of situation. So it's like that will be a whole episode by itself, but it's I like went to her house and I dropped it off, and I like sent a photo, like you know the DoorDash photos you get when you get food. I sent one of those to her, and she's like, "Thank you." And the dog ended up getting put down a couple days later. This was something that like this was one of those things that like I just didn't think about, and I didn't really think about this lady's comments. And now when I ask myself, when I have these huge debates on my head whether I'm a good person or not, and whether I deserve to be a good person or whether I deserve to be a bad person or whatever, when I'm constantly fighting this idea in my head, that always comes up. That is my first thought of, oh, maybe I have like a little sliver in me that's good compared to all this like bad things. Because I think almost everybody in the world could list off everything that's bad about them, everything that's a negative trait, everything that's they've done that slightly inconvenienced somebody else. But I don't think anybody could list more than 10 things that they think are good about them off the top of their head. And so like that's the only thing I can list is buying this dying dog a stick of pepperoni. That's the only thing I can think of when I think, am I a good person? And when I state it like that, it kind of sounds really stupid, but um that's, like I said, that's the only thing I can think of. And I just I'm always in this constant thought that I'm a bad person, that I don't deserve the things that I have, that I don't deserve to earn this or get paid this money, or like I feel like I'm in a constant battle of working towards like almost like repaying my sins. So like I've always been raised in a kind of like religious household, and it's like I feel like I'm always working to pay off my quote unquote sins. Like I'm working to almost wipe them from my slate. I feel like I'm just like always in this uh uphill battle. I can't think, it was Albert Camus that wrote the book about the guy rolling the boulder up the mountain every day. And that's how I feel with me being a quote unquote bad person compared to being a good person. It's like by the time like I'm working towards all these things to be a good person, quote unquote, but at the end of the day, the rock rolls back down the mountain. And it's a constant battle. And like I said, I just don't find anything within me that really makes me feel like a good person. And I think that's why I began to really ask, what does it mean to be a good person to myself? Because it's like honest, helpful. I would say I'm decently helpful. And it's like, you can ask, how do you know if you're a good person? It says positive intentions, putting the brakes on anger, so being calm when you're angry, restraining addictive impulses. See, I currently have a caffeine addiction. That is, I am not restraining an addictive impulse. Most of the time, I have positive intentions. Sometimes I do not. Putting the brakes on anger. I would say that probably 75% that 70% of the time that does happen. There's a few times where I lose my shit. It happens to everybody. Extending compassion and helpfulness to others. I wouldn't say I'm compassionate. I would say I'm helpful to other people. Grit and determination, lovingness, courage, generosity, patience, and a willingness to see and even name the truth as whatever it is. And that was written in Psychology Today in 2013. So that's a decade old. Generosity, I wouldn't say I'm generous. I am patient. I wouldn't say I have courage. I wouldn't say I have like upstanding determination either. And I would say I'm a loving person to certain individuals. Not everybody. There are some people I truly do not like. Um but when you like delve into these like really morally big questions, it's like I feel like you can never really fully answer them because like I said, like I've only felt like a good person once, and I keep repeating that. And I think that's what sticks in my head is that I've only felt like a good person once, like one time in my life. And no matter what, I feel like I'm going to be constantly doing bad things that quote unquote define me as a bad person. And I don't have all good traits. I don't have all good traits either. Like I said, I'm addicted to caffeine, and according to Psychology Today, back in 2013, you have to be able to restrain addictive compulses. I do not do that. I need my daily Red Bull or my daily coffee or whatever it is that day. So it makes it really hard to really answer the question, what does it mean to be a good person? You can't. And I say that to myself all the time, and I remind myself, you can't be a fully good person. I'm sure there's like some cases where like Gandhi or something was a truly good person, but I'm not Gandhi, and neither are you. So I don't think anybody can truly fully be good or fully be bad. And it's just kind of sucky in that. And it's like I have to remind myself you don't know. You don't fully know. And it's like I can say it as much as I want. I can say it as much as like I can in my head. I can write it down on every single post-it note I have. I can do all these things, but it's something that I truly have to grasp in my head and I have to make sense of. And I think with this kind of question, since it's so morally begging and doesn't have a correct answer to it, I don't think I can ever let the peace ever happen. I feel like with this kind of question, the water's always going to be murky. It's never going to be clear. The sediment's never going to calm down. It's never going to be like a clear answer, you know? And yeah, that's just something I really have to remind myself over and over and over again. And it's definitely going to take a lot of time to have that truly be a thing. So, I leave this podcast episode according to this, but it's really just a rant to myself. In that there is really no true answer to what does it mean to be a good person. So yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it at that. And I think that's all I have on this particular subject at this time. So uh, yeah, you can't really answer the question of what it means to be a good person. So yeah, this is me signing off. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Let me know if there's anything you want to have a topic on or anything that should be talked about. All right.